I am Max. Today, a wounded sniper, a fierce storm. One brave woman saves him. Enjoy this great survival story.
Then you know how to stay still.
He was wedged between two.
The temperature had dropped to -8 degrees Celsius when she found him.
The left boot's gone, the right leg's broken.
Someone told her story before she got close.
He was wedged between two granite boulders at the base of a ridgeline, half buried in drifted snow, left boot gone, the right leg bent at an angle that told the whole story before she ever got close. The storm had been pushing hard out of the northwest for 6 hours. Visibility was down to less than 20 meters. The wind came in long, flat walls that erased sound and horizon at the same time.
Can you hear me? Stay with me. Are you breathing? Webb, open your eyes.
Roger.
Opened, focused, drifted, focused again.
She stopped 12 feet away and listened before she moved another step. His breathing was shallow, fast, the kind of breathing that means the body is still fighting something the mind has already started to release. She crossed to him in 4 steps and crouched low, close enough to feel the heat his body was still producing. Less than it should have been. His eyes opened, focused, drifted, focused again. "You're not search and rescue," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "No," she said. "I'm better."
Her name was Kaya Runningwater, 23 years old.
His name was Sergeant Marcus Webb, Green Berets. She found his unit patch under the torn jacket before he could tell her. His radio was destroyed. The casing cracked open on the rock beside him. The battery housing split clean through. The emergency beacon on his vest had taken the impact too. The signal indicator was dark. Her name was Kaya Runningwater, 23 years old. She had been hunting that ridgeline since she was 9. Following trails her grandfather had taught her to read before she could write her own name in school. She wasn't military. She had never worn a uniform. She carried a Remington M40 on her back that had belonged to her grandfather, and before him to his older brother, and before that it had crossed water and desert and jungle in hands that were no longer alive to hold it. She had found Webb the way she found everything in that terrain, by reading what was wrong with the snow. The drift pattern near the boulders was too irregular. Something had displaced it at an angle the wind alone wouldn't explain. She had changed direction without deciding to, the way you do when your body knows something your conscious mind is still working out.
Hold on. Careful. I need to get these in here.
That hurts.
Just a little longer.
Broken. Compound. I can feel the...
Don't look at it. Look at me. What's your training? Sniper.
Designated marksman.
2 tours, 3rd deployment.
"How long have you been down?" she asked. 4 hours, he said. Then quieter. Maybe 5. She didn't react to the number. She pulled off her pack, opened it with practiced efficiency, and started moving through it without looking up. Emergency blanket. 2 chemical heat packs. Paracord. A folded wool layer she had carried for herself. She pressed the heat packs into activation and slid them against the sides of his torso without asking permission. "Your leg," she said. "Broken," he confirmed. "Compound."
You're not from the base, man.
No, and neither is anyone on that base.
I can feel the... Don't look at it, she said quietly. Look at me. He looked at her. What's your training? She asked. Sniper, he said. Designated marksman. 2 tours. 3rd deployment.
You tracked me in this.
The storm almost took the trail from us. The print sequence was nearly gone.
She nodded once. Then you know how to stay still when it counts? Yeah. Good. Stay still. I'm going to build a brace. She pulled 2 lengths of branch from her pack, carried for camp structure.
Hold still. Almost done.
Damn. That's tight.
It needs to be.
And stripped the paracord into segments with a fixed blade knife she kept on her hip. She worked with the calm of someone who had done something adjacent to this many times. Not on humans, on animals, on herself twice, in situations where no one was coming, and the only available option was to solve the problem. But the principle held: stop the movement, protect the damage, buy time for something better. You're not from the base, he said. No, but you know this area. Better than anyone on that base does, she said. Not with arrogance, with the same flat certainty she used to read the snow. She worked without speaking for several minutes. He watched her hands. You tracked me in this, he said eventually. It wasn't quite a question.
You're cold. Take this. I found them scattered back by the ridge.
Thank you.
He needs this more than I do. No, you're wearing the coat. That is not a request.
But I don't need.
You're wearing the coat, Webb. Now. That's not a discussion.
The storm almost had it, she said. The print sequence was nearly gone. But the weight displacement was still readable under the top layer. She tied off the last segment of the brace and tested its tension with 2 fingers. The snow tells you things. You just have to be willing to stop and listen. He was quiet for a moment. What kind of things? Everything, she said. Where something walked. When it changed direction. Whether it was carrying weight or fleeing weight. Whether it was injured.
Open up. Just a little. Drink. Just a tiny bit. Slow. You need to stay awake. Where are you from?
Pennsylvania.
Do you have a family waiting for you?
Yes.
She looked at him. You were moving northeast when you went down. The scatter pattern on the rock face says you hit it at the hip first, then the leg. That means you were running something, not walking it. So either you were being pursued, or you were chasing something that mattered. He stared at her. Training exercise. Went bad in the storm. She nodded. That's what the tracks said too.
Your grandfather taught you all of this?
Everything that matters. Vietnam. He never talked about it. Not once. But he came home and told me, showed me, the way the world actually is.
She pulled her own jacket off and draped it across his chest. He started to object. She saw it coming in his face before the words formed. The coat doesn't leave you, she said. That's not a discussion. He closed his mouth. By midnight, the temperature had dropped another 4 degrees. The wind had shifted slightly south and was now driving snow almost horizontally through the gap between the boulders. She had repositioned herself 3 times, testing angles, reading the air movement, finding the configuration that cut the most wind without sacrificing her ability to monitor him. She ended up pressed against the larger boulder, with her back to the wind and her left side against his shoulder. The emergency blanket wrapped around them both in a way that trapped what remained of their combined heat. She had rationed her water into him in small amounts every 30 minutes. She had checked his pulse against her wrist at consistent intervals. She had kept him talking, not constantly, not in long stretches, just enough to track his cognition. He told her about his team. 4 men, good men, he said, the kind you stop describing in detail because the details make it too real when things go wrong. She told him about the mountain, the way it changes personality in different seasons, the way it becomes something almost hostile in winter, not out of malice, but out of indifference, and indifference at that scale is its own kind of danger. Your grandfather taught you all of this, he said. Everything that matters, she said. Was he... He paused. Was he military? Vietnam, she said. He never talked about it. Not once. But he came home and spent 30 years teaching me how to move through the world the way the world actually is, not the way people want it to be. She looked at the dark beyond the boulder. I think that was the same thing, just said differently. Webb didn't answer for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. He gave you that rifle. He gave me everything, she said. At 2:47 in the morning, she heard the first footstep. She was already looking in that direction before the sound had fully registered. Not a trained response exactly, but something older than training. She had grown up listening to this mountain the way other children listened for footsteps in the hallway outside their rooms. She knew the difference between a sound that belonged and a sound that didn't. She laid her hand on the Remington without lifting it. Slow. No noise. 3 men. Moving without lights. Their approach was lateral. Wide and deliberate. The way people move when they don't want to announce themselves, but also don't know the terrain well enough to move quietly. Poachers. She had seen tracks from their camp 2 ridges over 3 days ago, and had marked the location in her mind as something to deal with later. Later had arrived. She didn't speak. She didn't move fast. She simply rose to her full height from beside Webb, turned to face the direction of the sound, and brought the Remington up to a low, ready position with the same unhurried motion she used when she was lining up a shot she'd already decided to take. The 3 men stopped. The storm noise filled the space between them.
The internal battery was cracked, and the external pack, carried for her GPS unit,
Wind and ice crystals, and the deep, cold silence underneath it all. The man in front raised one hand, palm out, slow, and the group backed away in 3 measured steps.
Almost there.
Just a bit more.
Compressed into a contact bridge. Come on, just work. It's blinking.
Then turned and disappeared into the dark without a word exchanged. She watched the space they had occupied for another 10 seconds after they were gone. Then she lowered the rifle and sat back down beside Webb. Were those... he started. Gone now, she said. He looked at her in the dark. You didn't fire. No. Why not? She thought for a moment, not because she didn't know the answer.
All right, Marcus, we're here. How bad is it? Webb, stay with us. Breathe slowly. We're getting you out now. Respond to me. Medevac ETA is 5. Hold on.
But because she was choosing which version of it to give him. Because firing would have told them exactly where we were. And because they already knew what they needed to know the second they saw me standing. She set the Remington across her knees. Some information travels better without noise. He was quiet for a long time after that. If something in this story is pulling at you, that loyalty, that kind of quiet certainty.
What is your status? Can you move?
No,
Did you sustain any injuries?
none that matter.
There are real accounts that carry the same weight. A free collection of 3 wartime stories, written out fully, covering the details and the silences that short videos never have time to hold. No credit card, no catch. The link is in the description below.
Clear the ramp, let's go!
When first light began breaking over the eastern ridge, she moved to Webb's damaged emergency beacon. She had been turning it over in her mind since the second hour. The transmission module had survived the impact. She had checked it twice in the dark with her headlamp, covering the light with her palm so it wouldn't carry. The internal battery was cracked and dead, but she had a small external battery in her pack, carried for her GPS unit, and she had been doing the math in her head for hours. The connection architecture was not standard. She had to improvise a bypass using stripped wire from the GPS unit itself and a segment of foil from the emergency blanket packaging, folded and compressed into a contact bridge. It was not elegant. It was the kind of solution that works because the alternative is that it doesn't work. The first attempt produced nothing. She waited 60 seconds and tried again. A single solid pulse from the indicator light, then a second, then a steady rhythm. She set the beacon on the highest visible rock face and sat back. At 6:22 in the morning, a rescue helicopter from Kirtland Air Force Base crossed the ridgeline on a search pattern and picked up the signal. When the paramedics descended to the position, they found Sergeant Marcus Webb conscious, stable, and coherent. His core temperature was borderline, close enough to the danger threshold that the lead paramedic would later say that another 90 minutes would have changed the outcome. His leg had been stabilized with a field improvised brace that the same paramedic described in the incident report as the cleanest non-clinical improvisation he had encountered in 11 years of mountain rescue. Kaya was sitting on the higher boulder with the Remington across her knees, watching the helicopter. She answered the paramedics' questions with the same economy she applied to everything else. Name, no affiliation. No, she didn't need medical attention. Yes, she knew the way down. Yes, she was certain. Webb, already strapped to the stretcher, turned his head and found her through the noise and motion of the extraction.
Weren't a call
Kaya,
for war.
he said. She looked at
They
him.
were a statement
I owe you
expressed
something
in
I don't
different
have the right words
words.
for. She shook her head once. You don't owe me anything. These are my mountains. The helicopter lifted. She watched it until it cleared the ridge and became a sound instead of a shape. Then she shouldered her pack, slung the Remington, and started down the slope. Webb recovered at a military medical facility in Albuquerque. 2 surgical procedures on the right leg, ambulatory within 6 weeks. He told the story to his team leader on the first day he could form full sentences without losing the thread. His team leader told the unit. The unit told the group in the adjacent barracks. By 72 hours after the rescue, the account was moving through informal military networks, sniper forums, veteran community channels, closed group messaging threads. Past the way important things get passed when the people sharing them already understand the weight of what they're carrying.
I am Colonel Hayes, ma'am. I'm here to explain the situation and what had happened across the network.
Since the rescue. Told her about the snipers. 600. She listened without interrupting.
No one organized it. It moved on its own. By the morning of the 3rd day after the rescue,
I'd like to ask what we can do for you.
The colonel commanding Webb's parent unit had received a communication that had not traveled through normal channels. It had arrived as a collection of individual messages, sent by snipers, designated marksmen, and special operations personnel across 17 different states. 600 of them. The messages were not a petition. They were not a formal request. They were a statement expressed in different words by different people that resolved to the same core when you stripped everything else away.
Take care of this land.
Find her. Acknowledge her. She is one of ours. The colonel spent 2 days tracking Kaya Runningwater through the Search and Rescue Coordination Office that had filed the incident report. He drove out to meet her at the trailhead she used most mornings. She was coming down from the ridge when he arrived, pack on her back, Remington slung, moving with the efficient, unhurried pace of someone who belongs completely to the terrain they're crossing. She stopped when she saw the uniform, waited. He introduced himself, explained what had happened across the networks since the rescue, told her about the 600. She listened without interrupting. Her expression didn't change. When he finished, he said, "I'd like to ask what we can do for you, in recognition of what you gave that night." Kaya looked past him, up the slope of the mountain that rose behind the trailhead. She looked at it the way someone looks at a family member, not as landscape, but as a presence that has its own claims and its own history, and its own right to be treated with something more than convenience. "Take care of this land," she said, "the way it took care of your man that night." The colonel did not answer immediately. Neither did the 2 officers standing beside him. They stood in the cold air of a clear morning, looking at a 23-year-old woman who had carried a trained soldier through a killing night with nothing more than knowledge, stillness, and a rifle her grandfather had trusted her to hold. One of those officers would say later that it was the only moment in his career when he had felt genuinely outranked by someone with no rank at all. The formal acknowledgement came through the State Emergency Management Office 3 weeks later. A letter, a commendation, and a request to consult on terrain orientation for wilderness search and rescue operations throughout the northern region. Kaya accepted the consultation role without hesitation. She declined the ceremonial rifle they offered as a gift. She already had the one that mattered. And 600 snipers in 17 states understood exactly why. Those kinds of stories, the ones that move without being organized, the ones that travel because the people carrying them know what they're worth. They show up in real war history too. I've put together 3 of them, written out in full, free to read. The link is below.